Welcome to the overnight section of From Day One. Art Bell and Dean Radin are waiting in the wings to conclude their conversation on the global consciousness of the world. We will have them here in just a few seconds. So, without further ado, as we march through Dominion, here is Dean Radin and Art Bell.
I'm on the line. I'm trying to get a caller. Are you there? Going once, going twice. All right.
Yes, I'm here.
Well, what in the world were you doing?
Oh, trying to figure out how it works, but I got it now, Art. Thank you.
Oh, good Lord. So did you hear it boing or not?
Yeah, I just caught it after I was running into the room.
What a lousy demonstration. All right, anyway, you're on the air with Dr. Dean. Hello.
Yes. Well, I wanted to ask how, in regards to this subject, as he's taken into consideration, near-death experiences as well as out-of-body experiences, and is that part of how he is, working out the theory there?
You know what? Let's ask about these. Doctor, these are very interesting things. NDEs, fascinating. OBEs, fascinating. And I don't know if you've looked into them or you have an opinion about them, but these are things that I study and interview guests about, and I'm fascinated by. What do you think?
Well, of course, NDEs and OBEs are strong challenges to the idea that consciousness is generated by the brain.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a brain and you still have experiences, well, where's it coming from?
Good point.
So
your answer is you obviously have to be looking into them because it meets up with what you're talking about.
Well, I look into them in the sense that I'm aware of the literature and I know people who know much more about this than I do. But we tend to do experiments. And it is possible to do experiments with NDEs, as Sam Parnia is doing, but that's a full-time job, and we can only do so much. So I let the experts in the NDE studies do what they do best, and I pay attention, but we're not actively pursuing that area.
You've got enough to work on. All right, let me try this experiment again. It's got to work. I'm going to go to Hawaii. I'm going to say, hi, Hawaii, you're on the air. Did you hear the boing?
Yes, I did.
Welcome to the program, and thank you.
You're more than welcome, and it's an extreme pleasure to talk to the both of you.
Thank you.
And rather than give you all my experiences with ESP and everything and UFOs and
That's all right.
And waste everyone's time, I'm just going to shoot right to the question.
Okay.
Dean, I have noticed, because of my perception over the years, and also Paul Smith has finally agreed to this on one of the other radio shows, that there is no such thing as the number 2. That is a convention. In other words, if you have even a small particle, the very nature of its description is that it is located somewhere and therefore cannot literally be in 2 places at once, even to include the interference patterns that you get with the slit light experiment from Einstein. And so if there is no such thing as a 2, in other words, you can have a bottle of Coca-Cola and you can have another bottle of, well, let's say soft drink, I don't want to say the brand name again.
I don't care. Another Coke.
Okay, well, you can have 2 Cokes, and you do not have a copy of the original. I mean, that's all you do have is a copy of the original. You can never have the original over again because it would occupy the same space.
I'm not sure I get it, Doctor.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Well, let me try one more time here. Any object, even molecules in the universe, and this is macro and micro, are self-evidently individual, but they also are just part of one big thing, the whole universe, the whole cosmos.
Oh, the great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, that's why remote viewing is possible, is because we are there wherever it is that we target. And the grid or the Akashic records or whatever you want to call it does automatic targeting and essentially locates part of where you are already at.
All right. Now I sort of get it. Doctor, have you looked into remote viewing? It is indeed fascinating.
Yes.
Something to it, in your opinion, or what?
Yeah, well, not just remote viewing, but all psi experience suggests that the universe is aptly named. Namely, it's one thing.
Uh-huh.
Quantum mechanics certainly tells us that the physical world is actually better thought of as relational and as holistic. And from that perspective, it actually makes a lot of sense that the reason that you're able to just as easily tell what's on the other side of a card as the other side of Pluto is because they're not really separate. Separation is an illusion. Right. And by the way, that is one of the core principles in most Eastern philosophies as well.
All right, I understand what he said. Just how he was trying to get us there was tough.
Yeah, because he said there's no number two.
Right.
And I actually use number two a lot in my work, so.
Right. Gotcha. Skype. Tom, you're on the air. Hello, Tom. Going once. Tom has waited so long. Are you sure you're not there, Tom? No, I guess you're not there. Too bad. Let's go to Amy on Skype. You are there, I hope.
Yes. Hold on. Just grab it.
Okay, turn your radio off, please, or device, whatever it is you've got on.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Hi, Dean.
Hi.
Dean, you had mentioned that neuroscience doesn't know what consciousness is. I was wondering, do you feel that your line of thought alludes more to pseudoscientific magical thinking, rather than the fact that we have not yet neuronally mapped what one would define as consciousness?
I'm simply reflecting what leading neuroscientists say when they're reviewing the evidence that we currently know about what gives rise to consciousness. But it's not only that. If what we see in the laboratory for phenomena like telepathy and so on are real, which I think the evidence is pointing in that direction, then a brain-centric understanding of consciousness does not seem to be sufficient. Now, the only proviso to that is if the brain is also operating on quantum principles, which of course is at least as controversial as the existence of psychic phenomena, then the possibility arises that the brain could give rise to consciousness, and Art mentioned this earlier, and consciousness then, or awareness, is actually not just in your head as a classical physical object, but is also spread out in space-time as a quantum object. And in that sense, you can create a completely physical explanation for why the psychic phenomena are real and why the brain would generate consciousness.
Yeah, but I feel that we're dealing with areas with a lot of mystery, and there's a lot of subjective thought around it. And personally, I don't feel like there's any compelling evidence for what you're positing. However, I do find it interesting, and thanks for having me on the show.
You're very welcome. But actually, there is compelling evidence. I mean, statistically, it's very compelling, Doctor.
I agree. I mean, that's what we see in the laboratory. That's what people have been looking at for over 100 years. The notion of not seeing the evidence or not feeling compelled by the evidence is an interesting one, because we know that a priori decisions or a priori beliefs about data strongly determines what you can see. And it's in both directions. It's a sword that cuts both ways. If you start out thinking this stuff probably isn't real, then you can't see it very well. You can't evaluate it very well. The other side, of course, is if you completely believe everything, then even the evidence which isn't very good, you'll see it in a very positive light. So this is not just true in this field, but every area of science is always dealing with the notion of how do we get beyond our a priori biases. And ultimately, we do the best that we can to provide the best evidence that we can, and the future will let us know who's right.
All right. Let's see. This is Karen on my wormhole, which sends me messages during the show. And she says that Twitter is asking Dr. Radin to please review the time frame of the 9/11 random generator results. And that is worth talking about for just a moment. Indeed, 9/11 registered big time on the random number generators. However, it, if I recall correctly, registered about 30 minutes, or began registering about 30 minutes prior to the event itself. You've had a lot of time to think about that, Doctor. Any thoughts? Why? Why before the event?
Well, this unfortunately is there's no easy answer to this. The standard analysis that we use for all of the events for 9/11, it did show a significant effect, but not wildly significant. It was only on exploratory analyses where we began to see much stranger things happening. Like the event on 9/11 was preceded by about 3 hours of a trend, which turned into a highly significant trend. Mm-hmm. But we didn't predict that in advance. I mean, we didn't even know about the event in advance, obviously. But the standard analysis is usually about an hour before something happens to several hours afterwards. The exploratory research went back days before to days after. And there you see the very long-term strange trends where 9/11 is happening in the middle. So maybe there was some kind of a mass-scale precognition that something was about to unfold. Certainly after the event, it took the world several days before it calmed back down into randomness. But again, I don't want to push it too much in terms of the what we found, because those weren't analyses that were predicted in advance.
Still, if you can understand that feeling and you feel it, you might as well duck, right?
Well, we know from many other experiments that we call presentiment, yes, that the body does respond several seconds before a randomly selected emotional versus calm image or stimulus. Right. So we know that in principle that we do get information from the future. So if you amplify that into a couple billion people, then the likelihood is that a lot of people, sometime before this major event occurred, felt something. I know even from my own family that my mother said that she woke up that morning and immediately felt that her blood pressure was way up. And so she took her blood pressure, and it was so high that she got nervous and called the doctor. And just around that time is when 9/11 happened. Wow. So she was reacting to something unusual, and once she learned what the event was, her blood pressure returned to normal. So again, multiply that out by lots and lots of people, and it does suggest that somehow people can feel when something is about to unfold.
Well, I had my own event, one really cool, precognitive, or not so cool at the time because it scared me, event. All right, stay right where you are. Dr. Dean Radin is my guest.
You get a shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park. Meantime, sound of the river, you stop and you hold everything.
I think I want to have Bob Crane on live, have him do his buffering imitation live. Wouldn't that be cool?
Remember, when calling Midnight in the Desert, let the phone ring until...
No. We've got a different setup now. Let's try this one.
Midnight in the Desert doesn't screen calls. We trust you. That's but true. Remember, the NSA... Well, you know, to call the show, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL-ART.
That's awesome. Man, that's funny stuff. The NSA, you know. Yeah, you know, right? All right, back to our guest, Dr. Dean Radin. Hi, Doctor. Really good stuff tonight, and really some deep thinking that has to be done. And you must do that every day. I mean, what do you do on your day? Does the weekend come, and do you stop thinking about all of this and sort of lock it out and go to a different world, or is it with you full time?
No, I consider that I'm very fortunate to be able to do this kind of research, and so I work on it all the time. I mean, it's not work for me; it's fun. So,
well, I do get that.
Yeah. And it's a strange. We live in a strange world where you have the majority of people, including scientists, who have these experiences, and yet, at least in the Western world, we're taught not to talk about them. So, as an example, I'm a member of a group that has been meeting monthly for 20 years almost. A very prominent group of scientists at a major university who have done their own experiments, experiments. They get successful results. They refuse to talk about them in public. And so it is easier today to get a PhD at a university by writing a dissertation on Buffy the Vampire Slayer than it is to do something on telepathy. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Maybe crazy, but I've had my own precognitive experience that was so strong that it was ridiculous. I mean, I think years ago I explained it to you, and I hate being dragged into doing it again, so I'm not going to. I'm going to resist. But suffice to say, I had one that was so strong that even when I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. And it turned out to be absolutely precognition. You know, somebody hit my car is the end of the story. And it really happened, and I knew it was going to happen, and I have no idea how I knew. But it wasn't, let's see, how can I put this? It wasn't subtle. It was like ocean waves crashing over me to the point I couldn't ignore it. That's how strong it was. But I can't repeat it.
Right. Yeah, so motivation, attention, maybe the moon has to be in the right position. These are many, many unknowns that we don't get.
Yeah.
Again, that's why we create little artificial tasks in the laboratory to detect whether in principle what you experienced was a genuine precognition as compared to a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. No.
So that's why we know that these things are possible. And occasionally you get something which is so overwhelmingly strong for the individual that it could in fact be a genuine effect.
Oh, it was genuine.
Yeah.
Of course, that's easy for me to say. On Skype, Blake, you're on the air.
Art, I'm on a show, actually.
Yes, actually.
Oh, I've been a fan of you for so long. It's amazing to finally be able to be on the air. I wanted to ask Dr. Radin, though, if he had read anything or knows anything about, like Hermeticism or the Kabbalion, because I've always found that it has, like, a really cool correlation with science, like with the principle of vibration and correspondence and mentalism, and I've always thought that, like, this Eastern philosophy kind of, like, stemmed from the stuff that I read about in the Kabbalion. Just wanted to know if he had done any research into it. And I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that book and with a great deal of the esoteric literature or the occult literature. And I think I agree that what we currently know as science today came out of those traditions. I mean, alchemy and chemistry are very closely related to each other in terms of their origins. And we know now that Newton spent a huge amount of time on science, but it actually more on alchemy. So
all right.
Science today owes a great debt to people who today, of course, you would look at the occult lore and see it as lore. And yet I think some of those old wives' tales, the old wives were probably smarter than we think.
Knoxville, Tennessee, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
Hi. I don't want to say who I am or anything.
That's
but
fine.
I know that you guys are really, really smart, and maybe you've read this book called The Strange World of Frank Edwards. And I read this book about 20 years ago, and there was a fella in the book who was in bed for like his whole life. And he was extremely spiritual, and intelligent. And he talked about the wisdom of the ages and everything. Well, when this guy died, they performed an autopsy on his brain because he was so intelligent. But when they opened up his head, there was no brain. And the guy was like speaking from his spirit and his soul. So I know that you mentioned about consciousness. Some years ago, I had a UFO experience.
All right, well, we're going to hold on that one, and we're going to stick with the no brain for a second. He had no brain. I had never heard this. Doctor, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that book. There are cases, though, contemporary cases, where people complain of a headache, and then they have a MRI, and it turns out that it's not that they don't have any brain, but that their brain has been squashed flat.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of liquid. They have cerebral spinal fluid that has pushed their brain, so it's just a very, very thin piece of brain.
Right.
And yet they still have a normal IQ, and other than a headache,
they function. So
normal.
That's right. Actually, people have had half their brains removed and continue to function.
Right. So some of this we can understand just from neuroplasticity, that the brain can rewire itself pretty well, and but it does make you think that then you take all of the little bits of evidence, everything from this kind of phenomenon to near-death experience and beyond. Is the brain the thing that gives rise to what we think of as ourselves? As I said before, some of it certainly does. You can't deny that the neurosciences are quite good at what they do, but only when you start ignoring all of the other little bits of evidence suggesting that maybe it hasn't completely wrapped up the whole story.
Fascinating stuff. Ken, you're on the air. Hi.
Hey, Art, great show, and I love the newscasts on the Dark Matter Network. Great.
Thank you.
Dr. Rand, this question's for you, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, Art. You talked about the DNA being unique and possibly an antenna on the previous show, and I submit to you, along with this other lady's mentioning of the brain function, it's a function of the neurons, and many of our great avatars in history, like Tesla and Ford, their brains were examined, and they had quite a few extra neurons. I'm thinking that might be a function of intelligence or the reception of the consciousness.
I'm not sure that that's really a true statement. Doctor, is that true? Have they examined in autopsies and determined extra neurons?
Not necessarily extra neurons, but some areas of the brain are denser. So some areas will have more neurons, yes.
So maybe more neurons in use. I think we only use some small portion of our brains, the average, right?
Well, neurons are dying all the time, but fortunately there are new ones that come along and are created. So we know, for example, if somebody spends a huge amount of time in intellectual work, that they're going to have more neurons in certain areas of the brain.
The second question, though, is to point out, though, is this potential antenna of the DNA and the helix being unique to every individual. I pose to you the possibility that it was engineered that way, and if indeed we were engineered as a slave race by the Anunnaki and the Sumerian cultures, that it would be a great way to control and monitor, if our brain is indeed a receiver, a large population to do their bidding, and if let's call that bidding being requested by the soul.
Okay, well, he's really going off a cliff a little bit there. But DNA is interesting, an interesting topic all by itself, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have a comment about what other creatures may have done to engineer us or not, but what I can say about DNA is that oftentimes psychic phenomena has been known to run in families.
Oh, yes.
Suggesting that there is a genetic component. So we're actually doing an experiment now where we're identifying people in families who have psychic skills and matched other people that don't report any psychic ability at all in families. And we're going to do a full genome analysis of each of these people. And then using modern techniques, we look at not individual genes, but networks of genes, to see if there's a discernible difference between the genetics of people who have the ability versus who don't. If we do find a difference, it becomes quite interesting because it suggests that there are already known pharmaceutical methods which can push certain gene networks, and you might be able to create a drug or therapy to either enhance or reduce psychic ability.
Right, there's a thought. Hold that. We'll come back and discuss that. A drug to enhance psychic ability. What do you think?
From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Please call the show at 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL ART.
Definitely the wild side of midnight. Dr. Dean Radin is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and my guest tonight. And we've been down all kinds of fascinating roads, and we're still on one. So please feel free to join us. Lots of time left. And I think we left it at drugs. You mentioned there might be a drug eventually that would enhance psychic ability. Really think so?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if there is in fact a genetic component, then the possibility arises of being able to push or suppress that component. Now, the suppression side is interesting because I suspect that at least in some cases, people who are diagnosed as schizophrenic are actually uncontrolled psychics. They're driven crazy because they don't have control over these kinds of effects, and they're quite strong for them. Of course, that's not true in every case, but if there's true even in some cases, it means that it may be possible to develop a targeted kind of therapy to allow the person to be, quote, normal by simply turning off this ultra sensitivity that they happen to have. And of course, on the flip side, you might find people who are mildly talented and you're able to vastly increase their ability, at least for a short period of time.
Or, I hate to get all Nazi-like on you, but I mean, if there really is a strong genetic component to PSI ability, then I suppose you could begin breeding for it, right?
Right. So one of the dangers in all of this is that you could both select people, because if you get their DNA, you could find out if they have the ability.
Wow.
You could select them, you could target them, you could create a genetically modified race of super psychics. That's why all of the research that we do, at least, is in the public domain to prevent the possibility of some sort of thought police from arising. But the reason we're looking at it is because if we're not going to do it, we know somebody else eventually will. So we figure it's better to know than not to know.
So, having said what you just said, isn't there somebody at some three-letter agency somewhere who is probably jotting your name down right now and thinking, well, you know, he's right. If we don't do it, somebody else will. Or worse yet, we're already doing it.
I'm sure I have a dossier or multiple dossiers somewhere. And again, they publish everything that we do, so it's in the public domain. So.
Yes. All right, on we go to, I think, Allentown, Pennsylvania, or something like that. Hello.
Yep, it's Johnny from PA, and I did hear the boing.
Good. Thank you.
Yep, and I want to bring up some evidence before I ask the question. The evidence is your show, Art. I mean, back in the old show, you used to do experiments with positive intention.
I know.
Or love.
I know.
And you had some pretty remarkable results, if I remember correctly.
I know. Actually scary.
So here's my question for both of you, and it's an opinion question. If we believe that, and if we don't think it's a coincidence, because I don't, and if you know you can do something and you can make a positive result as an individual, don't you have sort of an obligation to, or responsibility to sort of go through life making those positive changes in your world? I'll take the answer off the air.
All right, off the air it will be then. Doctor?
Yeah, a responsibility.
Sure.
Of course. We have a responsibility for our actions. This pushes it into responsibility for our thoughts. And I accept the evidence that we've seen in the lab and our colleagues see in the lab, suggesting that at least to a small extent, your intentions are not just inside your head. They do push the world around. So, yeah, we do have that responsibility. It's not always easy to carry it out, but, yeah, it makes a difference.
All right, Billy on Skype. Hi.
Hello, Art Bell.
Yes.
First-time caller.
Thank you.
In the information age, we question everything, making the return of the legendary Art Bell monumental to those of us who are asking.
Thank you.
First, yes, sir. First, I'd like to introduce someone who is also involved in this same study. He's Tom Campbell. He's one of the original researchers for the Monroe Institute, and he has a book out called The Big Toe Theory of Everything, and he's basically giving a scientific angle on everything that's being discussed tonight. The point is holographic theory of consciousness. It makes neural functioning secondary. Consciousness is primary. Material is secondary. Science says that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of neural physical physiology, but the reverse is true. Neural activity is an effect of the organized consciousness already projecting limitations that we call the material neural world. So I would like to hear the feedback, and I'll take that off the air. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, here it comes.
Yeah, I know Tom. We did a chat one time that was made into a video. It's on YouTube. I have his books, and basically he's talking about what might be called information physics, which is a branch of physics looking at the role of information, not force so much, but just pure information in shaping the world the way that we perceive it, and maybe the way that it actually is. So I think Tom's onto something. I talked to Tom about some of the experiments that we've seen in the laboratory and tried to get a description from his perspective on why we get the results that we do. And I think his ideas are in the right direction, but perhaps not quite specific enough for us to know what to do with them.
Okay. Back to the phones in the Boeing Twin Cities, I think. Hi.
Yes, this is Marcus from St. Paul. Art, I've been listening to you since grade school, and I'm currently 27, and this is my first time calling in.
People just won't stop doing that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So, Dr. Radin, when you were talking about these supernormal powers and psychic powers tending to be the strongest in young children, it sort of gave me chills because I have very strong memories from as a young child of repeatedly being able to levitate in my bedroom. And after all this time, I'd sort of forgotten about it for a while, and I had just started thinking about it again recently and convinced myself, well, these must have been recurring dreams or something, my imagination getting away with me, that convinced me that this was actually happening. And in light of what you said, I'm starting to reconsider and wonder if this actually happened to me.
That is so interesting, caller. I've got some of the very same memories. That is so weird. I actually sort of kind of remember being able to levitate. Dr. Radin?
Oh.
Yeah, so my first inclination in such a thing is to assume that the story is real. How would we go about testing it? Well, it's possible, of course. I mean, we need to find cohorts of 4-year-olds who have the ability, or at least claim to have the ability, and to start by taking videos. That's not so easy to do, however. Doing studies with children, especially children who are sleeping and claiming special abilities, it is possible to do, but so far I don't know anyone's actually done it.
It's up to the moms out there. When you go in and little Johnny's 4 feet in the air,
that's right.
Grab your iPhone.
And tell them, no, don't do that. Tell them, okay, that's fine to do. Just wait, and I'm going to take a video. Yeah.
What this caller says, though, is very interesting. I kind of have those recollections myself, vague recollections of being able to fly a little and levitate. And isn't that weird? Caller, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Fascinating. Arlington, Texas, perhaps? Hello.
Yes, good evening. How are you guys doing?
Just fine.
Good.
Recently I had what you kind of call a near-death experience. And since that experience, I have tapped into this cosmic stream of consciousness. Okay, it kind of scared me for a while, but I have learned to live with it and control it. And, Dr. Dean, you were correct when I talked about it with my family. They thought I was crazy, so I just kind of played it down and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm using it in my own way, with my friends and just projecting friendship and happiness. And I know a lot of things that I shouldn't know. And one of the things that is very curious about Burning Man, I watched a tape session of that recently, and I wasn't really aware of it before. And, it was so funny because it felt like I had been there and like I was there when I was watching it. And I'm very interested in attending the next one where we're having all the sensors available.
Dr. Radin, when is it coming up? When is Burning Man coming?
It's over Labor Day, so it's coming up in a week. And about this time next week. It's
short notice for you, caller.
Yes, I'm supposed to be in the Austin city limits and in Tennessee for a little bit then, but I was real curious about something that I have kind of determined is that the universe is conscious, and each of our brains is a miniature copy of the universe, and that's what connects us. And I have developed a special formula that I take of two very simple elements into more complex chemicals that is a way that's kept that with me and has enhanced it.
Well, what do you take?
Well, very simply, magnesium and calcium and DMEA and maca.
All right. Have you ever heard of such a combination, doctor? Or
well, I know what all those things are. I haven't heard of it being used for this purpose. So I don't know what to make of that.
It may well be that some people out there have come up with concoctions of things like that do act in this way. I guess it's worth looking at people's recipes. Hello there, you're on the air. If you heard the boing, you're on.
Art, I heard the boing.
Good.
Art, this is my 20th year, just as a side note, listening to you. And guys, so powerful. This is probably one of my favorite shows of all time that you've done, Art, because so many people are hearing about all these different little practices and things they might do for meditation and so forth that are just going to be experiencing this very powerful things in their own life. So all I can say to them is hold on tight and try to keep your wits about you, because I guess my point of my call was that I had extremely powerful experiences starting in 1994 when it just sort of was unleashed as what I call the classic beginner's mind.
Right.
And, it really almost overwhelmed me in very specific ways that were dangerous to me if I sort of didn't meander and sort of, as luck would have it, sort of get through it. And later on, years later, ended up having, a true crisis when I had 2 full months before 9/11, the beginning of those experiences, very visual, specific about it, leading up to the actual event where my life almost mimicked it as I flew cross country that day in a wide body jet out of Newark Airport, having woken up that day right next to Building 7 where I worked. I mean, it was a whole very powerful thing, but then not being able to stop it, that failure to sort of actionable intelligence really crushed me, and I had really survivor's guilt on that entire experience. God, it gives me chills right now. Just was able to deal with it afterwards. So just the downside I was going to point out of realizing you have certain abilities, but then in some ways, the negative of your failure to stop truly horrific events in certain cases can just be crushing. So just on that psychological side, I wouldn't not want to have had all, the full range of psychic experiences I then went on to have, all from the healing of animals, the seeing of the auras, the crazy synchronicities, all these powerful, wonderful things, creative visualizations. But that downside, I shut down for several years after that.
I do understand. I guess, Doctor, we don't have much time, so I'm just going to have to guess here. But if you have psychic abilities and then something like that happens, you could almost suffer a kind of survivor's guilt, couldn't you? Because you felt it, you knew it, it happened, and you couldn't prevent it.
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the next books I'm writing is about developing your psychic abilities and why that may not be such a great idea for the very reason that the caller is saying.
All right. I want to get this in because time is short. Your book is, your current book, Super Normal, and it's available everywhere that books and e-books are sold. That's an easy way to get it. Boy, we live in a great world now, don't we? So, your next book will deal with developing these talents and suggest that it may not be such a hot idea for what that caller just said.
Right. So part of the notion of training or developing these abilities is to learn how to turn them off. It's almost more important to learn how to turn it off than to turn it on.
Wow. I guess you're right. Let's see if we can take one more call. Amazing stuff tonight. Really is. Atlanta. Hello.
Megger Roswell's Art.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Swan, so a shout out to all the bell gabbers out there.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I was going to ask your guest, have you ever heard of the research of a physicist at MIT named Max Tegway, who has suggested that consciousness can be considered as a form of considered to be like a form of matter?
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
A form of matter.
Yeah. It's related to the brain giving rise to consciousness, in which case consciousness is a form of matter. Yeah, I don't happen to agree with that, but that, people are free to have their own opinions.
Okay.
It's hard for me to imagine that too, but
well, it would be a very peculiar kind of matter, but after all, matter and energy are the same thing, so you can think of it more as a type of energy.
All right.
That works for me too. So.
All right. I'm afraid that's about as much as you get. Thought or consciousness as matter. It's hard. It's a hard concept to get your brain around. But a lot of this is. I wish I had known earlier about your new book because I would have made you talk more about it. We're out of time, unfortunately. Dr. Dean Radin, it has been my pleasure having you on. Years have gone by, and you are still as riveting and fascinating as ever. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Take care. Bye-bye. Dr. Dean Radin, brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant, doing things that are probably years and years ahead of the rest of the scientific community with regard to consciousness. Whew. Really was something. Good night, everybody.
Searching for the truth, will we make it to tomorrow? Will the sun shine on you?
Thank you, Art and Dean Radin, for your conversation. Well, since we do have a little bit of extra time due to the conclusion of that particular episode, let me see if we can find a little bit of our Judge Judy. Oh, and we can. Okay.
Whatever it is, she found certain things missing in her mind. And she made a complaint to the insurance company, filed a claim with the insurance company, who did it, as they have to, an investigation before they pay out a complaint. And when you call the adjuster who is going to examine your complaint, what she did, and I assume she did make a police report.
Yes, indeed. Name me as culprit.
Okay. Can I see a copy of that police report?
No, because I don't have a copy. Do you have a copy?
I do have a copy.
May I see it?
You were denied a copy?
I was denied a copy because I was the culprit.
Put her out. She's annoying me. She doesn't learn. Not a free-for-all. It's an out.
Come on.
Oh, I beg
It's
your
an
pardon.
outie.
Pardon me. Thank you.
Oh, you can stay.
Thank you. Sorry, Your Honor.
Forgive me, Your Honor. Very difficult to find, but I do have it. Here it is.
Give it to Officer Bird, please.
May I ask what date that was filed?
Okay. So what she says in this Sheriff's Department report, have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you what it says.
I appreciate that.
It says she inherited the apartment from her cousin who passed away. Prior to moving in, she says where she lived, and she had seen photos of the apartment, she the defendant, and its contents, and through email exchanges prior to her cousin's passing away. On May 26, 2016, Anna moved to the apartment.
Sorry,
She
when?
looked around on May 26, 2016.
Your Honor,
That's what
may I correct that? I didn't move there.
I'm reading, listen to me, don't correct anything. I'm reading to him what the police report says.
Yes.
If it said something and it wasn't accurate, you should have corrected it at the time.
Oh, yes.
On May 26, 2016, Anna moved to the apartment. She looked around and inventoried the items in the apartment. She saw items were missing from the apartment that she had previously seen in photos. She believes another cousin of hers, Thomas Riley, who had access to the apartment prior to Anna's arrival, entered and damaged the mattress on the bed by cutting out a portion of it with an unknown object.
She's lying.
She also believes he took various other items from the apartment. She does not know for certain if Thomas took the items or damaged the mattress, but she stated she was in a battle with Thomas over being appointed trustee of her cousin's estate. Anna did not desire prosecution and did not want Thomas contacted over the matter. She stated Thomas is emotionally unstable and did not want to aggravate him.
Right.
Anna wanted the matter documented for insurance purposes.
If I may.
You don't have to. I'm formulating a picture. Do you understand?
I understand.
And as very often happens in a legal landscape, the landscape is changing, Mr. Riley.
True.
And it's changing in your favor, sir. Okay. Now you got a windfall. You inherited this apartment, and whatever money was left in the estate, if there was any. If it had happened to me, I wouldn't have looked at draperies, 2 sets, 92 inches, $650, sleep number bed, king size, model 1, $6,000, Moen brand shower heads, $2,000, a Galaxy Pro Tab, dishes, $350, Bissell Pro Heat Steam for the floor, white bleach cruiser bicycle, a purse for $1,000. How much in total did you get from the insurance company?
$16,000, Your Honor. I have
just a second. $16,000.
Yes, Your Honor.
None of which actually you paid for.
Correct. Yes.
All of which your cousin paid for.
Yes, correct.
Yes, correct. And the single most expensive item was a sleep number bed.
Correct.
And you gained access to the apartment in May of 2016. I said gained access to the apartment. That's what it says in the police report. It says Anna moved to the apartment.
Your Honor, was the first time I was ever at the apartment.
June?
June 24th.
June 24th. This is my problem with you. Yeah.
Yes.
You're getting ready for the problem.
No, I can explain.
No, you can't. There is no way you can explain it to me.
And the conclusion.
Because if I came in and I found all of those things missing and found the $6,000 bed destroyed, I would have made a police report that day.
Your Honor,
Just a second. I would have made a police report that day. You made a police report 2 months later and were very, very clear that you were making the police report for insurance purposes only. Made it very clear to the police.
Your Honor, I can explain the dates. I didn't understand that I had to make the report from that location. I left because I had appointments and I was working full time.
How old are you?
Well, hate to say,
Listen,
I'm old enough. I'm old
there's
enough.
nothing that you can say to me, Zippo, that you can say to me after being involved with him for an extended period of time in a contentious situation, that if you walked into the apartment and you found somebody had taken a knife to a $6,000 bed, that you wouldn't have called the police right away. Right away.
I called my attorney. Actually, I was on the phone with my attorney, and she told me.
Don't tell me what she told you. Listen to me. I'm not interested in what she told you. That's hearsay. There is no way that you would not have made a police report. Now, what is his case about? His case is about the following. As a result of you making this statement, and in order to clear his name with the insurance company, because the insurance company paid you, you have
wanted to collect from me.
That's why you hired the attorney. I understand. I said the landscape is changing. The landscape is changing. Do you understand?
I do. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, the insurance company told me to take my time in making the report.
Just a second. Don't tell me what the insurance company told you. That's hearsay. Second, because I heard you, I don't believe you.
No, I had to
listen to me.
investigate and get all of the pictures.
I don't believe you. Let's be clear.
Okay.
I don't believe you. So you paid $800 for legal fees. You have a copy of the bill.
I do.
I'd like to take a look
Your Honor,
at it.
I have pictures to show the condo.
Speak not. Police report. The day you found it. Not interested in your pictures. Not interested in your request for $2,000 more for the deductible. Not interested.
Okay.
Did you sell the condo?
Yes, I had to.
Don't tell me had to. Mm-hmm. Did you sell the condo?
I sold the condo, yes.
Okay, let's see. You sold the condo for how much?
$4,075.
407.
The net was $120.
So you got 100. Shh.
Yes.
Don't speak. You got $120,000.
Yes. And I had to that point, I had paid $75,000 in mortgage fees, HOA fees, late fees, interest,
so
insurance,
you're still on
utilities.
Hey, you're still $75,000 in the plus column.
Yes.
Plus $16,000 from insurance.
Yes.
Plus.
Your Honor, I can show the pictures of the property missing the day that I arrived.
Not interested. Okay. I know exactly what happened. $800. Judgment for the plaintiff. Your counterclaim is dismissed. We're done.
Thank you, Judge.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I'm very happy with the reaction. I think she got what she deserved, and I feel like I got justice.
Very, very aggressive and hostile and threatening.
Unfortunately, she's quite a sociopath.
When he had to provide a receipt, he wrote terrible things on the receipt to me.
She called me a liar, a thief, a cheat many times at every corner.
I think that really you are who you are.
And was always about the money. It only involved getting her money.
I was going to say, you almost lost that there, sir.
Tell me what happened with the dog.
I was walking home from school and across the street, and a lady was coming up towards me with a dog and baby stroller.
So she had a baby stroller. That was this lady here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was getting closer, the dog was like jumping around and making growling noises, and she was saying, "Don't do it" to the dog. And
She said, "Don't do it"? Was she holding on to the leash?
Yeah, she had the leash on her hand while she was holding on to it.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, that is false.
Just a second, don't interrupt. Okay. Go ahead.
And while I passed her, the dog went around and behind her and bit me on the leg.
Okay. And what did you do? Did you go home?
Yes.
Did the lady say anything to you?
No.
Did you say anything to the lady? No. Did you say your dog bit me?
No.
How did you find her if you hadn't said anything to her?
It was my dad.
Your dad found her. Did you go to the doctor?
Yes.
And you had to get a shot?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me where they gave you the shot.
On both arms and both legs.
And did you have to go back for shots more than once or just once?
I would have, but they found the dog.
So you got 4 shots that day?
Yes.
Do you remember what the dog looked like?
Yes, it was white and fluffy. It's like a medium size.
Had you ever seen this lady or the dog before?
No.
Okay. Go back there so you can stand next to your dad in case I have any other questions for you. Mr. Nunez.
Yes.
How did you find Miss Rodriguez?
The next day after, there was another incident, and then that individual we had spoken to that was in search of that dog also realized that it was the exact same dog that had bitten him. We received the phone call that following day on December 9th, and she informed us of it.
Who called you?
The individual from the Pflugerville Police Department made the phone call to me that next day.
That they had believed.
They did find that dog due to the fact of another individual being bitten.
By that dog?
By the same dog, yes.
On what date was the other individual?
That was on December 9th, in which that second incident occurred.
And the incident involving your son was on the 8th?
On the 8th, the day before. And then we've got documents of both of those incidents.
I'd like to see both.
Your Honor, that was hearsay. That was actually, my mom was walking the dog, and the dog, there was a pit bull unleashed.
Listen to me. Don't interrupt.
Yes, ma'am.
This is both. Unless yes, the first is
if
ourselves.
I ask you a question, but don't tell me what happened with your mom and what's hearsay.
Sure.
I actually know what hearsay is.
You got it.
We're speaking of the dog that's bitten two different individuals, not who was walking it the second day.
Your Honor, may I point out that on that record of my mother-in-law with the second incident, it shows that the other dog was not on a leash and was coming towards my mother-in-law and our dog.
And we actually called 911 that day. My mother did.
Just a second. Were either one of you there?
No.
No, ma'am.
Now I'll hear you. Go ahead. Tell me the story.
Okay. May I approach the board?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So it was December 8th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The school was being...
Sorry, did she say Sunday?
Just listen to me. Don't interrupt
her. Okay.
It was December 8th. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was going down Bishop's Gate. I saw that Samuel was coming, so my sister's very afraid of dogs, so I know to be respectful of others who are walking near us. And so I stopped to the left side with my dog on my left and on my right hand with the stroller. I directed Samuel to go around us and...
Just a second. Why would you do that? No,
I didn't direct him.
Listen to me.
I just stood there.
And you have to know, you're talking to somebody who's had dogs for 50 years and who walks dog on a leash when I'm outside. Why would you direct or suggest that Sammy go around the dog?
I directed him by standing there. I didn't tell him verbally. I just stood there to the side of him so he knew that he could pass.
Don't tell me what he knew. He passed you.
Yes, he did.
And
we walked, we kept walking, and then my dog started barking as we had already walked off.
And
I turned around, and my dog was just barking, and the kid didn't react.
Just a second. Be very careful. You know, when you start to say things that you've been practicing in your mind to say, but as you actually articulate them, they sound stupid.
Okay.
Okay? They sound stupid. Then you're sort of getting away from yourself. And that's what's happening to you right now. Because now you were turning around because the dog started to bark. And as you were turning around, you were going to tell me what happened? As you were turning around?
As I turned around, I pulled my dog back and Samuel just walked off. He didn't react. He didn't tell me anything. So I didn't assume anything. And I carried on with my walk.
And the conclusion of that, and we'll finish today with...
Let me tell you, Miss Rodriguez, why when you start to tell a lie, I always have a saying, and that saying is, if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory. I'm going to read what you swore to in your answer.
Okay.
On the day of the incident, I was walking Nala and pushing Alana in her stroller. As plaintiff's son approached, I pulled Nala's leash and kept her on my left side.
Yes.
I directed him to pass on my right side. Once he passed, I started walking again. All of a sudden, his son came up from behind us and scared Nala. When he startled us, Nala reacted to protect us. Now, what part of that didn't you put in? You want to look at it? You signed it. You swore to it.
No, I have a copy, Your Honor.
Wait, just a second. What part of that didn't you tell me?
I just gave you the simple...
No, that was very
story.
specific. I was swinging to the right. I was swinging to the left. I turned around. He walked away. What part of all that my dog was protecting us because he came up from behind, didn't... You see, when you have a truthful story, you don't have to have a good memory. You don't want to read this again, and you don't want me to read it again, right?
Okay. Yes.
Were you cited once or twice for your dog biting somebody within a week's period?
Once.
Once. And that was this child?
Yeah, the one.
That was this
the one
child?
incident, yes, ma'am.
And what happened with the other incident?
Nothing came to be of it. The dog was not on a leash, so it was really nothing to be...
Can I see the bite, please? You have photographs and the medical bills.
Yes. Added with those are the requests in regards to the payment made by the insurance company, the request for those dollar amounts being returned to them.
Actually, the amount that,
with the wrong name.
like 10.
Correct.
Your insurance covered most of that?
The out-of-pocket for the medical
Yes.
was just a hair over the 1,346. That includes all the medical and my missing of the time from work.
No.
Medical alone.
I just want what you were out of pocket on your medical. That doesn't mean that I'm
I have
discounting.
the email where he sent us the out-of-pocket expenses that he.
I'd like to see it.
Of us.
Here's a copy of the two medical records.
Just a second. His out-of-pocket was about $300. Now, this is my problem with you, Ms. Rodriguez. First of all, because you either lied in your deposition or you lied when you told me your story. I'm not so offended by that, although I should be, for the court be offended by that. What I'm offended by for this young man is, I believe you sensed in your dog that your dog was uncomfortable as Sammy was approaching. Either you knew that because your dog had been aggressive before,
no.
Or you knew that because your dog at that moment was agitated. Now, how long have you had the dog?
5 years.
Well, then maybe it's because when you have a dog for 5 years, and I assume that this is your first baby?
Yes.
And the dog has been your baby for 5 years, and you have a brand new baby that the dog is not happy. Been there, done that. And the dog's personality changes. The dog's personality changes because the dog is jealous of the new baby in the house. And I can guarantee you that you've seen signs of that change of behavior since your new baby came home. Whatever it is, when Sammy passed, Sammy did not come back in an aggressive way. Sammy did not double back to a barking dog. That's not the kind of child this is. And if you sense that your dog was agitated, you cross the street. You don't direct the child to walk around you. Get your baby buggy and your dog and you move them out of harm's way.
I understand.
Well, I'm glad you understand. I'm glad you understand. Do you still have the dog?
Yes, I do.
Well, you just be careful of that baby. I'm just telling you.
Oh, I have pictures here of my dog and the baby, and she absolutely loves.
Do you know how many pictures I've seen?
Well, I just like to say that my dog's not a dangerous dog.
Your dog bit the child for no reason.
I disagree.
There was a reason.
Listen, so far your wife hasn't given me a reason. She's given two different stories, but not one reason.
It's the same story, just one story is more elaborate than the other.
No, madam. There are two different stories, two entirely different stories. Unfortunately, this is on tape, so the 10 million people who are going to watch this case will see that you told two distinct stories, but neither one of them suggest that this child did anything wrong. One day, out of the blue, your daughter is going to be crawling on the ground, and Nala, Nola, whatever the dog's name is going to say, you know what, it was much better around here before I had competition. And then you're going to say, well, she never did that before. But the truth is, you've been forewarned. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,500. We're done.
That is a rare time where Judge Judy actually gives punitive damages. So we will finish this one fight, and then we'll bring a close to the day in Dominion. As always, please make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Get us to the goal of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So Boxy over in Nexters will send us those nice red packages to send to y'all. And Google will send our show out and, keep making us viable. CoinBase, Ibotta, and Game.gg all available. $10 free when you sign up for the first two. Your first 100 credits free when you sign up for Game.gg. CoinBase and Earn, 2-minute lessons, 1-question quizzes for up to $100 in free crypto. And that's not going to work, as the fight will come to a close. So until next time, it's always a great world to release the Kraken. Like, share, and subscribe, and be kind to one another as we all march along here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your night.